doing. Well, welcome now to our library studio here on the YAHOWAH blog. We're going to continue our series on qatsyr-harvest and talk about the events surrounding the Shabat harvest and the Towrah ingathering, as well as the sacrifice of the red heifer as it pertains to Dod and Yahweh's return on Yom Kippurim, so that we can all enter the Gan Eden again on Sukkah. These are the 4 Moed Mikre still to be fulfilled, and they all come either at the very beginning or at the end of the time of Yaakov's troubles. As a personal note, I don't very often do a show right after an emotional show, and when I do a program on the 18th chapter of Devarim, particularly as we get to 18:18. It tears my heart out to share the text that God inspired us to consider. And so, having come up from downstairs in the Rainbow Studio up here to the library studio, if it were not for Leah playing a contributing role here and to the Wookiee and my ability to say, okay, you guys, you take it from here, we wouldn't be here on this show, because for those of you who listened to the last program, yeah, it is exceedingly emotional for a guy who's about 99% head and 1% heart. So here we are. And as we pursue this, we're now considering the ongoing story of one of the least appreciated of all the prophets. His name is Yoel, called Joel. You very seldom hear him cited, and yet he is the one who lays out all of the events that, well, we are going to experience going forward. As I've said many times, as part of the YAHOWAH blog, we are delivering tomorrow's newspaper yesterday, so that you are able to see the world as it will be some 8 years from now. And as we know, Muslims and Christians and progressives, also MAGAs, have long coveted Israel, giving it to all manner of wannabes, and in particular now with the Muslims and Christians and progressives wanting it to be Palestine, we're giving the perverse Roman Emperor Hadrian the last laugh. But the promised land is Yahweh's gift to his people. And so he intends to reclaim it, and he will return to it. Those who protest otherwise can take from the river to the sea, and Palestine will be free, and they can shove it where the sun don't shine. Fact is, they're yeah, and I will personally ensure that everyone who has been an advocate for a Palestinian state and for the eradication of Israel will pay a very, very heavy price for that rot. Fact is, the banners and the slogans, the flags and the scarfs are all well suited for a future abode and Sheol hell. Thank Yahweh, we will be free of them at last. So Yahweh will be envious and zealous. So much for Paul, who said, love isn't jealous. Isn't that what he said? Well, Yahweh defines it otherwise. And I would tell you that I love my wife. And if she were to decide that she didn't love me anymore, or that she and the Wookiee were going to move to the house next door, it would affect me. I would be distraught. If you're in a caring, loving relationship, you care about that relationship. You're zealous. You're passionate about it. Unrequited love is the most miserable experience in all of human existence. So Yahweh will be envious and zealous, having his passion and jealousy for exclusivity in the relationship aroused for his land. And he will show mercy and compassion by sparing his people and family. The good news in all of this is that at the end of the time of Jacob's troubles, with the ingathering of Towrah and the sacrifice of the red heifer and subsequent return of Dod and Yahowah on Yom Kippurim, and our entry into Eden on Sukkah, where we camp out with Yah for 1,000 years here on earth, there is a happily ever after episode to the story. It ends, for at least a remnant, marvelously.
Before you go on with your happy ending,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about unrequited love a lot lately.
You are?
Yeah, I've never experienced it, funny enough. I've never experienced unrequited love until I met Yahowah. And I love my people. But if you try to talk to them about Yahowah, about the 7 Moed Mikra, about the terms and conditions, they are so vitriolic, incredibly arrogant, and their cup is full. They accuse me of not even being Jewish. You're not supposed to read the Torah. That's not for you. It's for the rab. On and on and on it goes. And I think I finally experienced unrequited love. I love them, but they cannot hear that Yahowah loves them.
If you were to define the Torah and the experience of the Exodus
Unrequited love.
in 2 words, it would be unrequited love. If you were to define Moshe's
life, unrequited love.
Yeah, Moshe's experience with the children of Israel, unrequited love. If you were to define the greatest of the judges and one of the great prophets, Shamuel, with Israel, it would be unrequited love.
Yeah.
If you were to describe Dod's relationship with the Yehudim and the children of Israel, it would be absolutely unrequited love. If you were to describe the relationship that Hosea and Yashaya, Isaiah,
on and on and on,
on
it
and
goes.
on. If you were to describe Yahweh's relationship with his people, the best phrase would be unrequited love. And so this is a very common theme, and Yahowah is frustrated by it, and he is going to resolve.
So am I, because I just want to get to the wedding part. Can we do that?
Yes. Well, I will tell you that you and I experience on the daily unrequited love. I reach out to Israel every single day, and Israel
he spits in our face
every single day. Israel is the hardest nation and people and race to love that there ever existed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, I can't say the hardest. Yeah, in a way, because listen, I certainly despise the Romans. I certainly despise what Islam has done to those it has affected, but I'm not attempting to love them.
No.
So I have no love for the Macedonians or the Assyrians or the Babylonians or the Aztecs and the Mayans or the Incas or the any of these people. Today's Muslims, today's progressive. I'm not trying to love them.
Ew.
So I don't have the experience of unrequited love with them. I am trying desperately to express love, tough love, to Israel and really the world at large that is not religious and political. And it is 99% unrequited. And I can't complain about that. And you can't complain about that, because our responsibility is to serve effectively as members of Yahowah's family. And Yahowah has experienced this for 3,450 years. So if God has had to endure it, and he is God, I mean, he's not like you and I. I mean, you're practically perfect, but I'm certainly not. And when you realize that God is, and everything he's done for his people, and they spit in his face,
It's egregious.
we should expect the same. Yeah, I was just reading in Yashai, or Devarim 18, Deuteronomy 18, and Moshe is saying, you put God in a position because of what you said in Choreb. And in Choreb, you said, we never want to hear Yahweh's voice again. We never want to see his brilliant light again. Ever. And when you tell God that, and God says, yeah, okay, I've got no problem with that. That's what you want. We'll honor your preference, free will and all. It had to drive a dagger into God's heart. It was worse than spitting in his face. And then you went and erased his name, and you erased him from your lives, and then you negated everything his son had accomplished. And that whole prophecy in Devarim 18 is about Dod, and you erased him from your life as well. Don't you dare say, oh no, we have the Star of David. No, you don't.
God.
David doesn't have a star. It's the star of Bar Kokhba, the false Messiah that you erected to obfuscate all that Dod had accomplished and represents. Don't even go there for a moment.
You've raised up the star of your king.
Yeah.
That's Bar Kokhba.
Yeah, the founder of the Messiah, the founder of your religion.
My Fitbit's going off asking me how I'm feeling. I'm feeling angry.
Yeah. Oh, and then you pretend like you're godly and you're staining Yahweh's reputation by wearing your phylactery and your kippah and wrapping your forearm and putting a box on it as if, oh yeah, that's what God wants, all right. And then you study your rabbinical arguments against the Talmud and Babylonian Talmud, not on top of all of that. And then you pretend that you're Torah observant while you erase Yahweh's name. You're being obnoxious.
Before you go on, I got a little news. Popped up in a book that I was reading, Jewish Witchcraft, History of Jewish Witchcraft. And it has become clear that the little boxes and the phylacteries and the this and the that, well, kids, it has nothing to do with Judaism other than the fact that it was a place to put witchcraft spells.
Yep.
That's its origin.
Yeah. Well, there were all sorts of incantations that were demonic that the rabbis in the Babylonian period had Jews put in amulets and in boxes and all sorts of
spell bowls and
clay
phylacteries.
Bowls. Yes, it's a hideous situation. Judaism is a curse on Jews, and so long as Judaism is revered in Israel, then God's going to have no part of Israel. He can save you from Islamic terrorism, but he won't do it while the voice of the rabbis is.
He can't save you from yourself.
Speaks over his own. So he can't save you from yourselves. He can eventually, but it's only when you are willing to change yourselves. So Yahweh will be envious and zealous, having his passion and jealousy for exclusivity in the relationship, which means no religion, aroused for his land, and he will show mercy and compassion. He will spare his people and family. This will occur, but it's not going to occur prior to Towrah on the 23rd and 24th, a Shabat of September in 2033, year 6000 Yah. And if you're saying, oh, can't be 6000 Yah in 2033, we're our calendar and that calendar are 197 years apart. Well, it's because I based my calendar and timeline on Yahweh's testimony. He told us exactly when we were booted from Eden, 3968 BCE. He told us exactly when Abraham and Yishak went up Mount Moriah and performed the dress rehearsal for Pesach so that we could reemerge into the covenant family. And that was 1968 BCE. And then he told us when the cornerstone of the house for Yahweh's name was laid, and that was 968 BCE. See a pattern here?
Again, on Moriah.
And 1,000 years after that, that's 33 CE, when Dode said that he would arrive to fulfill Pesach Matzah Makotim. He even told you through Daniel, as he was and is Gabriel, he is God's most courageous and compassionate man. 700 years in advance, he gave you the exact day that he would fulfill Chag Matzah. Exactly. So you know exactly when it occurred in 33 CE. And of course, he was right. The date that he gave was the midst of Chag Matzah in 33 CE. And what's 40 Yobel from 33 CE? Do I need to do the math for you? Or are you capable of adding 2,000 years to 33 CE? And what year do you come to? Your 6,000 then would be in 2033. Ding, ding, ding. And of course, you'll be 197 years off. How did Maimonides come up with his stupidity?
Because he was a Muslim.
Yeah, because he was raised and served Muslims. And what is the symbol of Islam? Would it be a moon? Yeah, a crescent moon, right? Not a full moon, but a crescent moon. And so what is the chapter that he came up with his dating? What's it called? The sanctification of the moon. And what is the magic number in
19.
Islam? Islam has a magic number. You know what the number is? 19. How did he base his timeline?
19.
Based upon the magic number 19. You were played for fools.
Dum, dum, dum.
And, you know, I figured it out. Well, I had some help. I have a wonderful fact checker, Mike B. And when I proved that Maimonides was wrong, he said, "Oh, you're going to love this story," and did the research. Mike's good at it, but it's not all that terribly difficult. You would think that some rabbi would say, "You know, I think I'd rather tell you the truth than continue with the lie."
Oh, no, they profit from that, lies.
Yeah. No, rabbis are the most highly paid clerics in the world by 3 times.
Professional paid
They're
liars.
professional money grubbers. Anyway.
And no, that's not anti-Semitic. It's a fact.
Of course, it's a fact. Yahowah states it over and over again that rabbis and Judaism are detestable. He calls it Toabah. So anyway, that's all she wrote for the absurd notion that Christian Gentiles have become God's besties. God's people have not changed in 4,000 years. They're a little irascible, but they're going to eventually change, and God's going to embrace them. He did not substitute for them.
A little harassable?
Yeah, a little harassable. Yeah, well, it's not that. And you think the Gentiles are better?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. His desire for them is still there, and all of the anti-Semitic rhetoric we have endured in our review, really of Acts, which was really disgusting. That's how we came upon Yoel, because Peter cites it to justify his Pentecost and the birth of his church, and for all the babbling that took place at that time, when in fact Yoel is speaking of the last days. So he was wrong by 2,000 years.
That's what happens when you quote mine.
That's what happens when you quote mine. And you twist the testimony of God.
Yeah.
Now, and speaking of those Peter and Paul fooled through all of this, I would be remiss by failing to mention that the 13th apostle was wrong when he wrote the first letter addressed to Corinth, that love is not jealous. Au contraire. It is exceedingly so. And having experienced it, they said,
wait. Though.
Yes.
Among gay men, that is practically true. They're not very jealous.
Well, it probably is true, but I'm not sure it's really true for Paul, because Paul's love interest was Timothy, and I never think he got over Timothy as his lover. Yes, in fact, Paul was homosexual, and I'm not saying that as a slur. I don't have any problem with.
No, but I've been around a lot of gay men, and they're just not jealous.
Yes, we have, neither of us have any issue with homosexuality. We choose not to be homosexual, but so long as it's not in my face, I really don't care what you do. I say that Paul was a homosexual because God said that he was a homosexual. When God condemned Paul by name and said that he was the plague of death, he specifically said that he has a fixation on the male genitalia. Now, as a dude, to have a fixation on the male genitalia, unless it's your own and you want to share it with your wife, it's probably an indication that you would be a little gay.
Especially if you said something like Timothy is the only man I've ever loved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, Paul was homosexual on top of all of his other
proclivities.
Yeah, he was also a murderer. He even admitted that he was a sexual pervert. And he
was
said that the only reason he knows he was a sexual pervert is because the Torah told him he was a sexual pervert. And it had not been for the Torah, then he would not have known that he was a sexual pervert. Therefore, would he have been a sexual pervert if he did not know that he was a sexual pervert, and he would not have known if it wasn't for the Torah? That was his explanation in Romans. It's one of the real.
Who's on first?
It's really one of the great treasures of Pauline Christianity. No,
along came Paul.
No, who's on second? What's on first? Okay. So, unfortunately, by this time, Israel will be in ruins. That's true. It's the end of the time of Yaakov's troubles, and there will only be a remnant of Israelites left. Well, after the Shabuah ingathering on the Friday evening of Towrah, the day of the Herald, and the 23rd of September 2033, and the final remnant of the not a remnant, but the final harvest of saved Jews who were part of the covenant family are removed, then that
would be a lakat, right?
Yeah, that's a lakat, a gleaning.
Yes.
What you're going to have then is a remnant of Jews and Israelites in and around the Temple Mount. Most will be gathered actually on the incline of Mount of Olives, so they're going to be able to witness all that takes place with the sacrifice of the red heifer. And then Yahweh has got a flying white chariot, spiritual chariot that's going to pick up.
Oh yeah, here comes the part I don't like very much.
Yeah, no, you don't like that part, but nonetheless, I kind of like it because it takes the pressure off Elia and I as we try to gather a remnant that's salvageable from Israel to be cleansed by the red heifer, and therefore welcome Yahweh and Dod back on Yom Kippurim. I'm delighted that Yahweh is finding and doing exactly what he said, because he said in Yashayah 17 that after this ingathering of Teruah, the harvest that evening, that Yahweh is going to bring his people from all around the world. And he describes those places that chariot's going to go. And then in Zechariah, it says specifically that there'll be 4 chariots, and it describes what the purpose of each of the 4 are. And I've done programs here, what I've told you exactly which each of the 4 are, but it's the white chariot whose job it is to glean people from all over the world who are Yisraelites, who have Yisraelite DNA, and bring them back to Jerusalem, who aren't still corrupted by religion and politics. If you're still religious and political, there's a black chariot, and it's going to take care of you. But if you
get another ride,
it's a much
you wait for the next guy.
It's a much shorter ride on that one. Not as much fun. But on the white chariot, you're brought back, and you're not anybody special at this point. Yeah, you're special because you've got Jewish DNA, and because you're not religious and political, and therefore you're going to be susceptible to and accepting of the sacrifice of the red heifer. And so God's going to add to the audience in Jerusalem so that this is not going to be like Dod. When Dod offered his Bashar body as the Passover lamb, his own people didn't notice. In this case, everybody that's there is going to notice, and there's going to be a big audience, and Yahweh himself's going to light the fire, and we're going to have the Don Rickles of prophets that's going to be doing the ceremony. It's going to be Elia, who's going to be the master of ceremonies. It's going to be the greatest show on earth. So there'll be no missing it. And everybody that's around Jerusalem who has been there to do harm to Jews is going to be incinerated. We're told exactly what's going to happen. And then behind them, you're going to find that the earth is transformed in the conditions experienced in the Garden of Eden, because in 15 days, we're going to go back to the Garden of Eden. So it is a marvelous, marvelous situation. This is the ultimate happily ever after. There is a little hiccup in the get along, and
the unrequited love part.
With the little.
I have empathy for Yahweh.
Yeah, the hiccup in the get along is a planned hiccup. The red heifer, it's a sacrifice, and he is the Adam of Parah. He's not a red cow. He happens to be me, and I get bludgeoned by Hasatan, and he eats my flesh,
The
he drinks
feast
my
of the
blood,
beast.
and then Yahweh arranges this great funeral pyre that has water gushing up from the Temple Mount and the flames that roar into the heavens, and it purges his people and cleanses them and prepares the adulterous woman of Israel for betrothal to the returning king 10 days later, who is David, while ridding Israel of all of her foes. So it's a
yeah, the end of
part
the
of the story.
story is a bridegroom king.
Yeah, it is true. And in the end, it is the adulterous woman is prepared for Dode's return. It is the ultimate bridegroom and the ultimate bride. And we go into Sukkah 5 days thereafter, and Sukkah is about the jubah, the wedding canopy.
Yeah, it's a family wedding, and Yehuda and Yisrael, your family, so you're supposed to be there.
Yep,
And the rest of the world is invited if you want to come.
Yeah, there will be an enormous number of goyim there. I don't know if all the goyim are going to arrive at this time or thereafter. Most probably arrive thereafter. They are in the dappled chariot at this time, and it canvasses the world to find goyim who are not religious. They're not political. They're not anti-Semitic. They're not conspiratorial. They have a positive attitude, and they have some aptitudes that will be of service during the millennial celebration of our return to Eden. And they'll be the workers of that period, so we can attend to more spiritual business. And I think that they, just like the mortal remnant of Israel that is spared on this day, will have the opportunity to learn more about God. I think that's going to be one of our jobs. I think the YAHOWAH blog will continue, and we will continue to teach both Yehudim and Goyim, so that more people can be part of the covenant. And at the end of that 1,000 years, we get to experience the creation of a new universe with ourselves as witnesses and participants. So it's really going to be an extraordinary situation. We hope you join us. I think that the number of people who will be on the Shabat harvest will be less than 10,000. I think the number of people that will be participating in the Towrah ingathering will be 7,000. And I would be surprised if it was more than 70,000 between those who are gathered from the world and those who are already in Jerusalem and have survived this and who are not religious and not political among God's people and are not belligerent anymore, who will benefit from the sacrifice of the red heifer. But still, that's a wonderful number. It's a big upgrade from the 2 that were part of the Exodus that were allowed into the promised land. Yeah. You're going from 600,000 to 2. We're gonna do better than that. You go from the Garden of Eden. There were 1 that became 2 that became none. So we're going to do better than that. So,
and it is an open invitation.
It is. In fact, even the test is open book.
Yep.
So here you go. And I have written 35 books to tell you how to pass the test.
Right there's the Cliff Notes.
There you go. Well, I wouldn't say Cliff Notes speaks of brevity, sweetheart.
Everyone's asking for the Cliff Notes. They're right there.
Oh yes, they're
right there.
They're the notes for the test. But
yes,
Yahweh is verbose. Moshe, who is his primary spokesperson, was verbose. His favorite person, his chosen one, exceedingly verbose. God is of the contention that it is better to tell his people what he's going to tell them, and then tell them, and then remind them what he has told them. and to do so with such marvelous interwoven strands and jewels and reflections and shading and detail, that the more you look at this picture, the more beautiful it is. It's like looking at the difference in something that is man-made and something that was designed by God. And what God designs is marvelous, but it's big. Look at this universe. It's big. Yahweh is big. That's why one of the reasons this whole notion that Jesus could be God is just ludicrous. God is big. He's not the size of a man. A God the size of the man would have a tough time building a nice house by himself, much less a universe with a couple of trillion galaxies, each with a few 100 billion stars.
You know what
So-
else is big? Mountains. And a cliff is big. A mountain is big. And you're a crag, a cliff. And
Yeah.
they're your notes. Ergo, those are the cliff notes. There you
Yeah,
go, kid.
Yeah. What do you think there, Wookie? Are you following along, Wookie? Wookie
It's
said,
a little bit of fuzzy logic,
Wookie
but
says,
it still works.
I love these shows. And if in a family environment like this, where you have a goy and a Yehud who come together and love and express their love and respect for Yahweh and his testimony, and are committed to the outreach of God's people, and we can share what we know with a smile and a laugh, but also a occasional heartfelt and deserved tongue lashing, because this is important stuff, then I think you're understanding why, when God said, I can live with the fact that you don't want me to talk to you directly anymore, because there is something special about God communicating his testimony through people like Leah and myself to you. You can see the conviction, the passion, the desire, the great love we have for God's people, and our commitment to awakening you from your stupor and protecting you all the while.
Yes, and I'm never comfortable with being the pursuer in an unrequited love scenario. That is not me.
No.
However, here I am.
Yes. Leah does not do unrequited
No,
love.
I do not. So it feels a little sticky. I don't like it. I'm not comfortable with it. But here I am.
Yes. Yeah. So we're trying to reach the vestige of the people who are receptive before it's too late. That is our mission. And in this next pronouncement, we learn that Yahweh is offering what is rightfully associated with the expansive growth that is related to the harvest of grain, the freshly pressed and renewing wine recently harvested, while preparing the vineyard for the heirs. All the while, the glistening and brilliant pressed olives are woven into the story, so that God says, through all of these exceptional metaphors, he is going to assure that we are satisfied with his fulfillment. And I will explain a little more about all of this in a moment. Yahweh, which is God's name, transliterated as guided by his Torah instructions on his Haya existence and his role in our shalom, reconciliation, as our Eloah, Almighty God, provided the answer by responding, Anah. And he said to the people of his family, please take note and pay attention. I am reaching out to you by sending to you that which is associated with the expansive growth related to the harvest of grain. The freshly pressed and renewing wine, recently harvested and prepared for the heirs of the vineyard, and the glistening and brilliant oil from pressed olives, so that you will be abundantly satisfied with the fulfillment of this. And I will no longer allow you to ever again be taunted and insulted among the foreigners and the nations. Yoel, Yahweh is God. Joel 2:19.
Wow, you know what's really impressive? He begins the whole thing with saying, please. That God is, Yahweh's polite. Please.
God is very polite.
Please listen.
You know, for God, he is actually quite humble. You know, God doesn't ask us to be humble in any way. He much prefers that we be bold, but God understates his position. He doesn't lord over us. He doesn't try to wow us with shows of daring do and magnificent miracles. He's very understated, exceedingly approachable, comfortable to be around. You know,
and even polite.
he's polite. You know,
He's way more polite than Yisrael,
Yeah.
because he says some things that I know about our history, Jewish history. And he is way nicer than he should be when he says even the mean things.
Yes, yes. He's slow to anger, actually.
Yeah.
If you're watching this program and you see my eyes track to the right and track to the left as Leah is speaking, this is because I really don't know where I should be looking when Leah is speaking, because she is sitting in a chair off to my left. But there is this lovely orchid and a wall of lights. There's a little peekaboo from a wall of lights that I can see her, a little bits of her. But I also have a monitor that shows what the camera is capturing of me here and of Leah, now full screen of Leah. So I have the ability to see her when she is picture in picture and when she is full screen off to my right. So I have Leah on my right. I have Leah on my left. I am surrounded by Leah.
Surrounded by Leah.
You know, if as a guy I ever wanted a menage a trois, I have a menage a trois of Leah.
You know, with all the work that we have to do, I'm actually thinking of cloning myself. So 3 Leahs would be nice.
Yeah, 2 Leahs would be nice.
3 better.
I don't want. If you have no interest
and
in
that
going
you
forward
can
of
have
having
many wives,
multiple wives, but you know, multiple Leahs would be work out just fine for me. Anyway, I have multiple Leahs at the moment on my right and on my left. So I'm really not, I don't have eye issues. I look both ways. So Yahowah, we get back serious here. Yahowah provided the answer by responding. So you want the answer of how you're going to inherit what Yahowah has to offer, how you're going to reconcile this divorce and the fact that there is an embittered, unrequited love issue between Yahowah and his people. Why he said to Hosea, "These are not my people. They are not my children anymore. I'm divorcing you."
Not my wife.
That why he said that? Well, and how you resolve that? Well, you return to him, and he's providing a means to help you in this regard. And he is providing that means to you using symbolic terminology. Now, the reason that Yahowah communicates this way is he did not have any interest. In fact, he wanted to preclude anyone from knowing how he was going to resolve this issue until it was time for the person that he chose through whom he would resolve it to know it and share it. Now you'd say, why is that the case? Well, because rabbis and Judaism have been so caustic to God's people. And the rabbi that created Christianity was demon possessed. And the man who created Islam by purchasing Talmud recitals from rabbis, Muhammad, who was also demon possessed, these people are scoundrels. If the rabbis actually understood this and they would recited the truth to Muhammad, Islam would have been a much more devastating religion. And if the rabbi Paul was aware of what we know, he would have made Christianity much more compelling, much more difficult for me to repudiate. But he didn't, because God didn't want it to be known that way. The rabbis would not have written the Talmud had they known what I know about Yahowah. They would have written Yada Yahowah.
Oh.
And they didn't, and Yahowah didn't want them to know because he knew that they would use it against him and against his people. So coming to know Yahowah's name was obvious, but not disclosed until some 24 years ago when I introduced it.
You know that great old snake, the Nakash. I was looking again at the word and hadn't noticed it before, but one of the tertiary meaning is to diligently observe.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't perverse something you don't know.
Correct. So that you can't corrupt something you do not know. And since they didn't know Yahowah's name, they didn't corrupt it. Now, this second word here, it's Yahowah Anah. Anah is one of those words that I don't think anyone explained until I explained it in these books. And it is one of the most important words that I provided a detailed explanation for in these books, because it's more than just correctly saying that Anah means to answer and respond. It means to reply, to declare, and to inform. Those are all the primary meanings of Anah, but Anah has another set of meanings that are derogatory, and those meanings are to afflict, to abase, and to abuse. In the JPS, Jewish Publication Society version of the Tanakh, many times that Anah appears, they go right to the abasing, afflicting, abusing definition. And you can only use that definition if it's in a context where it is applicable. For example, on the Yom Kippurim, which is the Day of Reconciliations, Kippur is the same word that is used for the Kipporeth, which is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. And so if it's the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant and it is Yom Kippurim, which is the Day of Reconciliations, it can't
Why
be.
would you debase yourself on a day like that?
It'd be the opposite of what you should be doing. And so
no, let's just twirl chickens around our heads and spread their blood and throw them in the trash.
We'll confuse them with the screaming chickens that they'll never know what we're up against here. So Anah is one of those words that is important because it is used in conjunction with Yahweh's Mikra and Mikre. Mikra is from Kara, and it means to invite, to welcome, to greet. So if God is inviting you to 7 annual meetings, and then he says it's your responsibility to Anah, what are you supposed to do when God invites you to a meeting to be welcomed into his presence?
Oh, I know. Respond.
There you go. Anah. Respond.
RSVP.
Right, respond. So that's why I think Anah is such an important word. So Yahweh provided the answer by responding, and he said to the people of his family, please take note and pay attention. Hannah, look up now and see. So I am reaching out to you by sending to you. So God is going to provide something. What is he going to provide? I am reaching out by sending you that which can be associated with the expansive growth related to a harvest of grain. All right. There are 2 grain harvests. There is Bikurim and there is Shabuah. The grain harvest of Bikurim was fulfilled by David after fulfilling Pesach and Matzah. He fulfilled Bikurim. It is a barley harvest, and the next harvest is fulfilled almost 2,000 years later. 2,000 years minus 7 years later is Shabuah, 7s. And it is a grain harvest. And since we're talking about the last days, not the middle days, year 4,000 Yah, but as we approach year 7,000 Yah, he just said that you're never going to be abused and mocked again. So this is talking about something that's going to take place in and around year 7,000 Yah. And so what is the grain harvest that would transpire, is scheduled to transpire in the vicinity of year 6,000 Yah? It is Shabuah. So God is reaching out to you by sending to you that which is associated with the expansive growth related to the harvest of grain. That would be Shabuah. And not only is Shabuah being offered to you, but the person who is cultivating that harvest is the final Zeroah. He is Yada.
That guy.
He is this guy right here. So God,
there's no way anyone's getting to Shabuah harvest without the Nakar.
Correct.
Choder, Craig, Yada. He has many titles.
Yep.
Many titles.
He is the
But no one would, myself included, would know his name, the Moed Mikra, the terms and conditions, or the story, complete story, if it weren't for him. And he's also known as the Man of Edom. That would be Jacob's brother.
Yes. Okay, so
it is a family affair.
And that gets us to the second thing. It says that that which is associated first with the grain, that would be Shabuah. And then he says the freshly pressed and renewing wine recently harvested and prepared for the heirs of the vineyard. There is a place in Yashayah, Isaiah, which would have been revealed a couple of centuries before this, where Yashayah gets really excited. I mean, he is the happiest prophet in the history of prophets, and he speaks of the Zeroah, which is the man that's responsible for this harvest, and he says, "That's my Zeroah, man. That is my guy. He is cultivating the seeds of this harvest." And then when he gets to the point, he's talking about this man who comes from Edom, and he says he's dressed in bloody red, and it's because he is in the wine vat with me. He is in there we're working together as a team. And as a result of this, he is going to save many. And so that freshly pressed wine is the prophecy being fulfilled of Yashayah, of the final Zeroah, this man from Edom, getting in the wine vat with Yashayah and pressing these renewing grapes that will be prepared for the harvest and the heirs of the vineyard. He then says, and the glistening and brilliant oil from the pressed olives. The Towrah Lakat in gathering is specifically of olives. 2 or 3 olives from the uppermost branches. That would be Yehudim. And 4 or 5 olives from the branches which were cut away. That would be Israel. And that is what occurs on the evening of Towrah, the Friday evening, September 23rd of 2033. And that is the glistening and brilliant oil of olives. In fact, that harvest is described almost as a river of light that goes from earth to heaven. And so these freshly pressed, glistening and brilliant olives are going to make a river of light from here to there. And so that you will be abundantly satisfied with the fulfillment of this, because the following fulfillment is where the Adam of Parah gives his life to purge the infidelity, the religious infidelity of the adulterous woman that is Israel. So she's prepared to be betrothed unto Yahweh. That is the fulfillment of all of this. And when that occurs and Dod returns as our king, Yisrael and Yehudim will never again be taunted or insulted. This is now speaking of what transpires at sundown, 6:22 p.m. in Jerusalem, with the return of the greater luminary and the greatest luminary of all, Dod, and his father Yahweh, as they return to planet Earth for the great homecoming and family reunion, the day of reconciliation, Yom Kippurim, this day, the 2nd of October, 2033.
Yeah, wedding feast.
So there we are.
You're invited.
Yeah, and we're going to have a wedding that will transpire.
With a bridegroom king.
Yeah.
And a
5 days
stunning
later.
bride.
Yeah, 5 days later, we're going to have a wedding. And what's interesting, on the day that the red heifer, the Adam of Parah, this man from Edom, is sacrificed, it will be an eclipse of the sun. That is the day where the moon, the lesser luminary, takes center stage in God's reconciliation of his people. When we enter heaven as for this wedding ceremony on Sukkah, where we get to camp out in and around the chuppah, the wedding canopy, that at that moment we're going to experience a full lunar eclipse. So it is the moon that is eclipsed on that day, because the sun is what matters. So anyway, that's God's plan for all of us, and at this point, Israel lives in peace.
And I used to have a hard time with the thought of you being the sacrifice. But hey, if it's for a wedding, you know, the wedding feast and the bridegroom
Mhm.
and the whole day. This is really the day that Yahweh is looking forward to.
Mhm.
I think the Towrah and Shabua is also going to be a very delightful
So a
time for
delightful
him.
time for him.
Absolutely
Well,
delightful.
I even think he's going to enjoy Teruah, even though there's a sacrifice that's part of it, because the sacrifice is so short-lived, and I'm only giving up my corporeal body, which has no use anyway, and immediately my soul rises according to Yahweh, and I get to celebrate the benefit of all of this right next to him, and he's going to have the roaring fire and the waterwork coming up from the Temple Mount, restoring the earth to the conditions of Eden, and all traces of religion and politics and militarism conspiracy vanish, and in its anticipation of his son returning, and he has his favorite orator, Elia, delivering the one-liners of the event and having everybody in stitches. I think Yahweh's going to enjoy.
I think it's like the
Teruah.
engagement party.
Yeah, but the great day of Yahweh is Yom Kippur, and when he returns
Yeah.
with his beloved son, and his and Dode receives the gratitude that he deserves, and that
Everyone's together
and
again.
that we're going to celebrate the wedding for 1,000 years. It's going to be a marvelous thing. In fact, there's even a very strong suggestion in there that when Dode and Yisrael marry, that that first year is a vacation. So it could be a vacation for everybody for a whole year. We just like, wow, okay, this is going to be
That'd
fun.
be nice.
And we go to work thereafter. So it may be a vacation for everyone. I can tell you for certain, I'm going to be ready for one.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
We'll go have some fun. So God was not speaking of sending the people in his troubled land copious amounts of grain, olives, or grapes, but instead offering what they represent. Wheat and barley are synonymous with harvested souls of Teruah and of Bokurim before it. Like grapes becoming wine and olives producing oil, grain must be separated from the rest of the plant and then crushed to make bread. All these things are useful when separated and crushed. Being set apart is essential. If you're going to be with God, you must be set apart from man's most common things, which are religion and politics and militarism. Must be distinct from those things, set apart from them, and then having undergone challenges. If you are here and you have never suffered, you have never been in a difficult situation in your life, you do not know what it's like to overcome unrequited love, for example, then you just aren't going to fit. So all of us have been crushed at one time or another, and then figured out ways to recover from it and stand up and to make life meaningful. Now, Abib, which starts the countdown to the 7 Moed Mikre, it derives its name from the barley kernels that are green and growing still on the stalk. And wheat is symbolic of more prominent and mature, especially valuable standing grain that is harvested on Shabuah. It is the most abundantly satisfying result of all the mikre being prepared and produced by our God. Now, while we're on the subject of Dagan, grain, in Debatim words 8:8, chitta, wheat, to project maturity and prominence, which is what the word means, was listed first and thus considered the most valuable product of the land. Even before Sarawah, barley, which, by the way, can also mean tempestuous circular reasoning. And
imagine that.
yeah, Yefen, which are trindles of grapes, a bent vine, is what the word means, and ta'ina, figs, which is an opportune time to approach. Rimon, pomegranates, which means to be lifted up. Zayeth, shemen, olives, and their oil, shimmering, shining, and growing. And dabash, honey, the enduring and satisfying nature of the word is what it means. So that was the list, and the thing that was listed first is chitta. God doesn't do anything per chance. There's a reason for this particular order.
First come, first serve.
There you go. in this, come join us. In this example, we're into sharing. Grain was listed first because it is symbolic of the Shabuah harvest, which is designed as an ingathering of different varieties of chitta'im. It's specifically wheats, plural, which is, of course, symbolic of Israelites and Goyim. And the final abundantly satisfying harvest is of olives, symbolizing the ingathering of Yehudim on the eve of Towrah on the Friday evening. Also interesting, grain for bread, grapes that become wine, and olives for oil represent things that must first be crushed before they are useful. And that's something everyone who has value in the covenant has endured. I have not yet met a single covenant member, particularly those who are active in the covenant, who haven't had grief in their lives, and that most of them have grieved because of fractured families. I've experienced fractured families on multiple levels. My beloved wife, Leah, has
all about it.
Experienced fractured families at 3 different levels. I've experienced it at 3 different levels. Yeah. Rich, our producer, has also experienced it at different levels. It is something that God has experienced at every possible level. Yeah. So it is something that we need to have an appreciation of. That is what
empathy for.
Yeah, and empathy for. Yeah, it's why Yahowah asked Hosea to marry a religious whore, a temple prostitute, because he wanted his prophet to be able to speak with empathy about what he was enduring, trying to have a relationship with a religious whore in Israel. So this is what's going to occur the last and final time to Israel. These 3 things also represent matzah, Pesach, and Bikurim, which is why God's people will find them so fulfilling and satisfying, is because those sacrifices endure and produce fruit forevermore. This prioritization among divine ingredients gives special meaning to the upcoming harvest. It is how God himself described chag matzah, affirming that it exists as a Bikurim qatsyr of chittim, and as if ingathering that is takupath, at the turning point of the end. This marvelous prophecy is one of many affirming that we are right regarding its purpose as well as its timing. We'll share one more line from Yoel with you, and then we'll conclude this program. It says, you should act to capitalize upon. After all, if we go too far, we might run out of material.
Doubtful.
And maybe in 10,000 years, we will. We always kid that, we're going to be here for 1,000 years. And I think that the YAHOWAH blog continues, and our job will be to teach the newbies of the mortal remnant of Yisrael, as well as the Goyim who are here to serve. And that we are going to provide the explanations that help them understand, even though the Torah will be written inside of us, it still needs to be explained. It needs to become relevant in their lives, and they must need to know the consequences of it. And that's going to be our job, is to do that forevermore. So you should act to capitalize upon the Feast of Shabuah. That is our message to you.
Sooner than later.
You should act to capitalize upon the Feast of Shavuot, the promise of the Shabbat, of Shavuot, of the oath of weeks and of 7 sevens. How many years is the fulfillment of Shavuot from the time that Yahweh and Dod return?
7.
7.
7. What is Shavuot called?
Shabat.
7. I think maybe that's a clue.
Hmm.
You should act to capitalize upon the feast of Shavuot, the promise of the Shabbat, the oath of weeks and of 7 sevens. And you should, for you all, the reason you should do this is for you all to approach, as it is a Bakurim, first fruits, firstborn children, qatsyr-harvest of chittim wheats, of mature and valued grains, known for projecting themselves and standing up prominently as a chag, as a celebration of the asif, the ingathering, at the turning point of the end.
Dum, dum, dum.
All so that you can change. Or you can read it at the end of years. Shemoth, Exodus, names, 34:22. You know, a lot of people think of the Torah as a set of laws. That's how the rabbis have framed it. And of course, there's no laws in the Torah. The Torah is not comprised of laws. There's no Lord to obey. There's not even a Hebrew word to obey. It's teaching and guidance. But one of the things that is understood by my wife very well, but by few others, is that Torah permeates everything that God conveys. The writings, the Mizmor Psalms, and the prophets are comprised of Torah, God's teaching and guidance. Likewise, the Torah is comprised of Nabi, of prophetic declarations. This is a prophetic declaration
Sure is.
and a divine teaching that is found in the Torah. They're all one. The Torah and prophets doesn't really need to have the and in between them. The Torah is prophetic. The prophets contain Torah.
The Torah, like Yahweh, is one. No more of this is that, and this is that. It's all rabbinical horse pucky.
Yes. When my wife wants to direct my attention to something, she will call it the Torah address, even if it's in a prophetic book, because from her view, everything that God conveys through his writings, through his songs, through his proverbs, through his prophets is Torah. It's teaching and guidance. And she's right. So you should act to capitalize upon the Feast of Shavuot. So if God conveyed this through Moshe, and it is in the Torah, why would anyone neglect this instruction? We're here to tell you that the Feast of Shavuot will be fulfilled in 11 months, 22 May, 2026. We know this because we've done the study and know exactly when each of the Moed Mikre were fulfilled and will be fulfilled. And we know that Dod is returning with Yahweh in 2033 because it's year 6,000 Yah. And, you know, I was pretty good at math. I can subtract 7 from 2033. Yep, I can do that. And get what year I come to when I subtract 7 years, Shavuot. When I subtract a Shavuot from year 6,000 Yah, which is 2033, guess what year I come to?
2026.
2026. And I can also look at what day is Shavuot, because I know that Shavuot is 7 sevens. That's why it's called Shavuot. It's 7 sevens from matzah in that year. And so it's not difficult for me to go and say, well, it's got to be in the year 2026, and it's got to be 7 sevens from the celebration of matzah, which is on the 15th day of Abib, based upon the renewing light of the moon closest to the vernal equinox, which is when barley would be still growing, but green and malleable within its kernel, that would be the time. And you know something? I come up with 22 May 2026. So for me to tell you that's the day of the harvest, I'm telling you quite frankly that I'm doing a lot of calculations. I'm using my head and I'm thinking it through. This is the information that God gave us. These are the names he applied. This is when, I calculated when Dode said he was going to be here to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. I did the math. And when you do the math, starting at 444 BCE with the decree to the 20th year of Artaxerxes, when the decree was given to return to Jerusalem, I did the math of what Dode, as Gabriel, God's most courageous and capable and competent man, said that he would arrive. And when you do the math, it's Chag Matzah in 33 CE. And so I know that's your 4,000 Yah, and all I had to do is go 40 Yobel from that point in your 2033. And it's just an interesting affirmation. If you go back 1,000 years from that, you have 968 BCE as your 3,000 Yah, when the cornerstone was laid for the house of Yahweh's name. And you go 1,000 years back from that, you have 1968 BCE, which is when Abraham and Yishak went to Mount Moriah as the dress rehearsal for the celebration of Pesach, in exactly that same place, exactly 40 Yobel thereafter, which would have been 33 CE again. You can do the calculations. This is how you can figure it out. And
okay, I'll give you something that will rather most men can't figure out.
Well, women.
Yeah. So you probably don't know much about wedding etiquette, right?
Don't know what?
Wedding etiquette?
Wedding etiquette? No, I'm Yahweh's wedding etiquette or just general wedding etiquette?
General wedding etiquette.
Okay.
So general wedding etiquette is that you send out to your guests in advance so that they can prepare. And it's usually exactly 8 to 11 months prior to the date. Where are we? We are 8 to 11 months prior to the date. Again, this is another show of Yahweh being polite.
Okay, yes.
But call Marina, the hairdresser, and Josie, the dressmaker, and get your stuff together because it's coming soon. And RSVP.
You're right. Yeah, so he's sending out the invitation. And so he's
right
saying,
there is the invitation.
Yeah, here's his invitation. Here's an engraved invitation for Yahweh. And he says, you should act to capitalize upon the feast, the Chag, the celebration of Shabuah, the promise of the Shabat. And it's for you all to approach as a Bakurim, first fruits, qatsyr-harvest. Now, why would he say it's a, because this is a wheat harvest, why would he say the wheat harvest is a barley harvest? Because first fruits is a barley harvest. Why would he say that? Well, the answer is quite straightforward. If you're going to benefit from the Shabuah harvest, you can't just show up and say, take me, I'm yours, I want out of here. No.
Don't work like that.
Doesn't work like that. For you to avail yourself of the Shabuah harvest, you have to have attended and responded to Yahweh's invitations, answered them for the Moed Mikre of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. You've had to become immortal by properly celebrating and understanding and accepting the benefits of what David did as the Passover lamb on Pesach. Then you need to appreciate what Dode did for us by carrying our guilt away on his nefesh soul, deposited in Sheol, so it'd never be seen again on Matzah, such that he then was released from Sheol, returning to his father, where the Bakor, the firstborn of Yahweh, signed our adoption papers on Bakurim, firstborn children, and therefore qatsyr is a harvest. This qatsyr of Shabuah is a harvest of firstborn children. 100% of the beneficiaries will be there because they have come to know, understand and accept what dough did on Pesach and matzah to make Bikurim possible. So,
And they appreciate it too. You left that part out.
do what?
The accepting the covenant is the appreciation of who God is and what his plan is. If
Yes.
you want to walk it alone, you are more than welcome to. Free will, baby.
Yeah.
But if you want to come to the party,
Yeah.
polish off your shoes
Well,
and start working on those books because it's the only way you're getting there.
Well, this statement speaks of the harvest of Shabuah, of wheat, the standing prominent harvest of Shabuah, is a firstborn children harvest, a Bikurim harvest. So what I focused on is what God said at this point. It is also true that therefore, it is therefore true that you will have to have benefited from Pesach and matzah to be a firstborn child who gets to participate in the Shabuah harvest. Leah is correct in stating that when you read the Torah and put the whole Torah together, you're not in a position to celebrate Pesach unless you have observed the conditions and accepted the conditions of the covenant. To even approach the possibility of benefiting from Pesach and matzah and Bikurim, you must walk away from religion so that you are no longer religious. If you are religious, you are not welcome. Go away. Number two, you have to walk to Yahweh and allow him to perfect you. That is what you do when you observe Pesach, matzah, and Bikurim.
And you do that by walking away from your father's house.
Correct. Number three, you have to trust and rely on Yahweh, which means that rather than trusting your rabbi or trusting your favorite politician or yourself, you're trusting and relying on Yahweh, which requires you to know who Yahweh is and what he is offering, because it's not about believing Yahweh. It's not about faith. It's trusting and relying upon, and that requires knowledge and understanding. The fourth condition is that you are observant, that you closely examine and carefully consider these very same terms and conditions of the covenant relationship. If you don't understand what you're getting into, you are not getting into it. And number five, if you, as parents, you are asked to circumcise your sons on the 8th day, which is symbolic of eternity, such that you remember to raise them as members of the covenant family, and so that they are reminded at the point of the male genitalia responsible for conceiving new life in the womb of a woman as part of a marriage and family, that you will raise your children to be part of God's family. Yes. And that you will be cut from the human condition, which means separated from it, cut away from it.
Yahweh's covenant is a blood covenant. Just go ask Moshe's wife. You know, the one they hated.
Yeah. So, yes. So it is a requirement for men to be circumcised if you're going to participate in Pesach, which then leads through matzah to Bikurim. And Bikurim is the nature, this firstborn children is the nature of the celebration of the Shabuah harvest. And we are told it is a harvest of wheats, which is mature and valued, standing, projecting, prominent grain. The reason that this is important is that you're not going to be part of that covenant unless you are prominent in the covenant family. You are making a contribution to that family. You're standing up for all that God is conveying to his people at this time. You're not standing aside. You don't walk away. You're standing up prominently, projecting yourself in the right place, acting in a mature way so that you can be valued.
Okay, so I don't think that a whole lot of modern people understand how food is actually acquired, because they think they go to the grocery store and just buy it. Mm-hmm. But it used to be that the entire village participated in just reaping of one field.
Yes.
It was everyone's business and everyone pitched in. No one was sitting around. Not one. Not even the little ones.
You know, it's really interesting, too, that barley is harvested when the kernel is still green and growing. It has moisture in it. and it is laid down in the field where it dries and becomes
Matures.
processable. So it's like saying on Bikurim, we're going to do this while you're still receptive, but you're going to lay around a while before we bring you in.
Yeah,
And then on a wheat harvest, the wheat has to dry. It has to be stout, standing up, and be firm
right on the stalk.
on the stem before it is harvested. And once the sickle comes to it, it goes immediately into the processing of purifying that grain and blowing away the chaff. So it's an immediate thing, where Bikurim is a delayed thing. So there's an interesting understanding if you want to know when Dode fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. Other than Dode, really no one benefited from Bikurim at the time. They would have to hang around for a while. But on Shabuah, it's immediate. The grain isn't laying around. It's standing upright. It's firm. It's prominent right there. And it is immediately processed as a chag, a celebration of the Asaf, this ingathering, the bringing together and the assembling and the withdrawal and the removal of these saved souls.
And this is the grain that goes into Yahweh's house, his storehouse.
Yeah, and
his,
this is
his granary.
And this is the turning point at the end of years to change. It is the turning point at the end of years, 7 years from the very end. Yahweh's timeline where he goes through. You're in Eden to the time you're invited back into Eden is 6,000 years. This is 7 years from the end, which is why it's called Shabuah. And that's what it says here. This is the turning point at the end of years. Wow.
RSVP.
When you analyze every word that God says and you put it into the proper context and you make the necessary connections to transition from knowing to understanding, it's brilliant. Every nuance of it is beautiful. It's elegant. It's growth enabling. It's life transforming. It's reassuring. It's consistent. It is edifying.
Would you say it's something you could trust and rely on? Because I would.
Yes, it is all of these things. So I want to thank you for listening. We enjoyed being able to bring this program to you. It's a lot more fun doing it with Leah than it is alone, even though I have the Rich is my companion downstairs. Rich is my companion up here, but Leah's my life companion. And it is much more fun when we do this together. And we thank you for being part of this program. We know that there's a very active covenant family that responds to this on Facebook and on X and YouTube as well. So thank you all for participating, for contributing to getting this message out to God's people. He wants everyone to follow his advice and respond so that you attend and participate in and act upon the Shabuah harvest.
Don't be the unrequited love.
We're on the road to Shammai.